Hey everybody, and welcome to the show. I'm James, that's Katie, and that makes this the final episode of Cloud Control for 2022. It is the first ever 12th episode of the show. Welcome, Kate, to our final show of the calendar year. How do you feel on this occasion?
I feel like this is the episode I look forward to every single year because it's just so fun, like looking back on it all, going over through all the games you've played and just kind of reliving those moments a little bit. And then there's the fun added stress of trying to categorize them and get all your favorite games on the list somehow.
I know, it's really impossible, right? I mean, I don't know what you use for your tracking, but like I'll use How Long to Beat, that website. It actually shows people like estimates of how long it takes to beat games, but I don't really enter that. But it just has a great set of like graphs, and you can keep track of stats of games you beat every year. And I just love lists and like, statistics and stuff like that. So it's really interesting to me to track year over year. And every year when I come on this site to go through our awards and sort of go through the games I've beaten, I look through this list, and there's usually like 20 or 30 on there depending. And it's just like, oh yeah, I played that this year. Oh my God, I forgot that was this year. Like that was so good. How am I going to get that on the list? And it just becomes like this terribly hard ordeal.
Well, it's even worse when you don't track it. I say every year I'm going to start tracking it. And then inevitably by like March, I beat something and don't put it on. And then I realize later I've forgotten something. And then I just have a mental breakdown and I go, well, if I miss one thing, the whole list is ruined. So I'm not going to bother and I'll just start next year.
Oh man.
Like, it's the stupidest logic. But this 2023 is going to be the year. My New Year's resolution to track better on that website.
Okay, you have heard it here first. I remember at the start of this year, I was trying to get you, oh yeah, you should totally add that to your list. And it just didn't happen.
I did, and then, oh God, I don't know what happened. And then you get into those games where it's like, well, I played this, but like, I didn't beat it, so am I allowed to put it on the thing?
Yeah, see,
and like, oh God.
Those are the ones that fuck me up because I don't put those on my list either, and I just have to remember those ones, like the ones you fall off of, or it's like a longer ongoing game, or things like Fortnite where I'm playing it like ongoing, but you can't beat it. So it becomes tough to track that. It's a whole nother argument. Anyway, that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to give out some awards today because this is the first ever annual 2022 Cloud Cup, where we're giving away today our Cloud Cups in 11 different awards categories, which we will give to you in just a second. But before we do, we just want to thank everyone for listening with another great year of podcasting. We've been doing this for what seems like forever now. So thank you for coming along with us and doing that. And we also have some award winners from you guys who have written in from our audience as well. So just off the top, if you would like to write in your awards to be written out next show or in a future show, we can do so at CloudControlPod@proton.me. Or you can get in touch with us, of course, on any of our social media links, which are in the description of the show, wherever you're watching. And thank you once again for all of the support and participation. We love it. And it's going to be fun to see what you guys have written in as well. So without further ado, Kate, I think that's all we have to go over before introducing our award categories for the year. Although I think before we do that, we just wanted to go over what our game of the year was from last year, because that's always fun to look back. So what were our games of the year from last year?
Your game of the year was Metroid Dread. Which is a fantastic game. I actually beat Metroid Dread maybe like 3 weeks ago. So that's an exciting one for me to look back on.
Yeah, very recent then for you.
Fitting
of the awards too, I think.
Exactly. It's a good game. I really enjoyed it. And then my game of the year was a slight shared title. There was an honorable mention for Sekiro because I beat Sekiro for the first time, I think, right at the beginning of 2021. And so I played the majority of the game through 2022 and then beat it at 2021, just kind of had that like 3 weeks of it. So I had to say that like that was the best game I played all year. But the game that I fell in love with for a long period of time in that year was Returnal. And so Returnal took the official prize, with Sekiro being like, I just had to shout it out.
Right.
You know me.
Of course.
I got to get it in somewhere.
Exactly. Okay, well, those are good games, fun to look back, but let's get into this year's awards because that's what we're here for. of course, tonight. And so, without further ado, why don't you introduce our listeners to this year's 11 categories? Mostly the same as the previous year, but we switched a little bit around. So it's going to be fun.
I think we have 2 new categories returning, and then some that have been slightly modified for anyone keeping track at home. So our first award is going to be for the most surprising game, a game that was either far better, far worse, or far stranger than your initial expectations. And I love that. It's such a wild card. I like that award a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2 is for best co-op, the best jolly cooperation, either couch or online. Number 3 is going to be the funniest game, the game that demonstrated the highest level of comedic genius or led to the funniest circumstances. Number 4 is the best comfort food game, the perfect game to curl up and relax with. Very important in this trying winter times in Vancouver. Number 5 is probably one of my favorite categories is best new mechanic. So either the best new or unique use of a mechanic in a game. Number 6 is a classic best music / soundtrack, and then you do a little bit of headbanging on that one. Number 7 is most screenshottable. So this is quite a broad category, but it's going to be mostly for mesmerizing environment design, creative locations, or just pure wow factor on the visuals.
It's got a wow effect on those visuals.
Wow effect. Yes, it does. Number 8 is favorite character. So that is the best development, writing, design, gameplay mechanics. Who has the fullest package of 2022? Number 9 is our most unique game. So not quite like anything you've ever experienced and maybe never will again. Number 10 being the best ending. So the best boss fight, story beat, revelation, just something that had you holding your breath for those last final sequences. And then, of course, number 11 is our definitive game of the year, which game embodies the rest of these categories and your brain will just not shut up about. So
it's a great list.
Yeah,
it's a great list.
We've got some good, unique stuff. Definitely some things where, like, you play a game and you're like, I'm in love with this game, but it doesn't fit in every single category. And so you have to get a little bit creative and you kind of come up with some picks that sort of you didn't expect to be on the list necessarily, but they're just so perfect for the category at hand.
That's right. And so before we get into our winners, 2 things. Number 1, 2 rules that we just need to introduce right away. The first rule is, like you said, you cannot use the same game 2 times. So if I wanted to put Super Mario Brothers on my list for the best soundtrack, it could not win my game of the year. Only one. And number 2 is that we must have played this game this year. I think you said that as well. It doesn't have to be a game that came out this year. It just has to be something that we have played throughout the years of 2022, new or old. And so just before anything else, let's read out what our listeners wrote in, because it'll be fun to see what they wrote. So I think you had a couple and so did I. So go ahead.
Yeah, so we had a good write-in from our good friend of the show, Jonah, and he was wonderful and actually gave me his full list, which maybe I'll tweet somewhere, put something if you want to read the whole thing. But just in the essence of time and fairness, I'll read a few out here that I think are really quite interesting. So for his most surprising, he put Plague Tale Innocence. It was a game I recommended to him. And he responded to me, he's like, I'd heard good things, but I didn't expect it to be this intense.
Wow.
So he played with the rat controller and had a good time. He's actually playing the second one now. So it was, we've done a good deed on this show. For our number 4 award, the best comfort game, the perfect game to curl up with, he put Stray. And he wanted to point out that it literally has napping built into the game.
How can you argue? How can you argue?
That is pretty cozy. For our Screenshottable award, the best environments, he put down, of course, Fashion Souls 3, aka Dark Souls 3, for amazing vistas, level designs, and of course, the player fashion. And then, most importantly, his Game of the Year award goes to one of your favorite games, James. He played Spider-Man.
Nice.
He actually put it for his favorite character as well, of Peter
Oh,
Parker.
no, that's
So
a little cheating,
it's a
but you
little
know
cheating.
what?
So
He didn't
he
know the
says,
rules. It's fine.
well, no, he did. He did.
Oh, come
He, in
on.
fact, his quote, in fact, says, "I'm ignoring your rule if you can't pick a game more than once, because the character and the control of him is why the game is so good. Flipping through New York feels incredible, almost as incredible as the verb flipping itself."
I like that
But yeah.
answer so much. You're almost justified in cheating, but I still don't respect it.
I respect it because sometimes on this show I cheat.
That's true. All right. I had a couple of responses to the most unique game they've played this year, although kind of funny responses. Mike, friend of the show, Mr. Del Monster, wrote in and said he hasn't really played anything unique this year. He's just trying to game the Twitch algorithm so he can't put his finger on it. So I guess that's kind of a unique response. And then Ryan wrote in and said NHL 23 is like nothing he's ever played before. And I know Ryan, and I know that all he plays is NHL. So I guess for him, that is a good perspective to have.
It's maybe very different from like 21, right?
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
two
I
years of
also,
2 years of roster changes,
well, I
right?
mean,
It's a
of course,
while.
and like the crowd looks marginally more improved as well. Like, what else can you say? I also had a response
Marginally.
from one James Holiday on Twitter for the funniest game he's played all year, and he actually wanted to give it to Pentiment for some pretty comical moments. Although High on Life was another game he brought up, and I thought High on Life was one that immediately came to my head too. But it's like I haven't played that game, so I couldn't write it. But I just know like we saw so many trailers of that game, and it's known for like the humor style and all that. So maybe that's a good one.
Yeah, that was the hardest word for me. I feel like not a lot of games are like comedy centered games. Like a lot of games have comedy in them, but it's very you get High in Life and like Stick of Truth and like every now and again one of the like a comedy game comes out, but they're very specific.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But those are good picks. Those are all
Good
good picks.
picks. Good
Aside
picks.
from NHL.
In the eye of the
But we
beholder.
appreciate
In the
it.
eye of the
Mhm.
beholder. All right, let's
Exactly.
get into our awards. Before we do, Kate, were there any games that you couldn't wedge into your 11 award slots that you just wanted to give a tiny shout out for that just couldn't quite make the cut?
Yes, I have 3 games here that I am deeply, deeply emotionally involved in, but they just didn't make it on the list for various reasons. So the first one is one of the best games I've ever played, Detroit: Become Human. You heard me talk
Wow.
so much about this game, and it was up for nomination in multiple categories for me.
I'm shocked that
But I
Connor
just
might have won your character of the year there.
You know what? Connor was up there. Yeah, Connor was in really strong contention. I love Connor. It's such a good game. One of the best I've ever played. Like I would recommend it more than some of the games that are winning awards on my list here today, but just the nature of what the categories were, it didn't quite slot into anything perfectly.
It is the
Um,
nature of our award show.
that is the nature of the award show. So that is my mention of please go play this game. Next, I have a game called Dark. I don't know if you remember that game. It was on a PS Plus offering this
I
year.
remember that I spelt it wrong on the thumbnail for the
Yeah,
video.
it is dark, but it ends with a Q instead of a K. So it could have been up for most unique game based on that alone. Unfortunately, it isn't gonna win. But it was just a really clever puzzle game. It had a really kind of spooky atmosphere, and it just had some really unique puzzle solvings. A lot about like kind of shifting the level's perspective. So it was 2D. You'd be running along, and you get to like a wall, and then all of a sudden, instead of like running into the wall, you'd get to the wall and then all of a sudden you'd be walking on that wall. Like that would
Yeah,
now
yeah,
be the
yeah,
floor.
right.
And it kept just tilting levels and these really neat like perspective shifts. And I was horrible at it because I'm really bad at directions. But luckily I played it with some friends. Very good game, couple hours long, cute indie. And finally, now just hold your breath for a second because you're gonna freak out, but there's a reason for this. Is God of War Ragnarok is not winning an award for me this year.
Wow.
However, the reason is I have not finished the game and I am going to be continuing to play it well into 2023 and it is going to guarantee win an award at our next year's show, but I want to finish it before I can definitively say like what award it's going to be and like which character do you pick? There are
Mm-hmm.
so many
Mm-hmm.
contenders in that one. So that is a holding off, not a lack of winning.
You know what? You know what? I was thinking about how I was gonna razz you for this and just be saying, "Oh, Kate,
Mhm.
this is how you've squeezed all your games into these categories, isn't it? You've pushed God of War to the
Yeah, but the
next
problem is
year."
that the problem is though is that next year I'm gonna have a bunch of new games, and
That's right.
then like it
Well, that's
just
what I
it just
thought.
snowballs.
That's what
So
I
yeah.
thought, and then also I thought at the same time as well. You kind of have a fair point because you're definitely not, quite even at the halfway point. I wouldn't imagine from where I'm at. And like I've played enough. It is in one of my award categories, but I
Mhm.
feel like I'm near the end. I kind of know where I'm at. So, okay, we've been stalling enough. Let me get to my honorable mentions very quickly to stall just a little bit more, and then we'll get into it. I wanted to nominate Dragon Quest XI for Best Innovative Mechanics so badly because I loved the crafting system in that game. I loved the way you could collect the materials so easily and just kind of have that fun little mini game to upgrade your armor. But at the end of the day, it still just wasn't that unique, and it's just a crafting system. It's not like super integral. Just couldn't get it. But I love that game. Great RPG if you're looking for one on Game Pass, especially. Um, Monster Sanctuary, so close to being a comfort food game. And in fact, it
Ooh,
was
okay.
the best comfort food game ever for like a 2 week span when you and I were both addicted to it and just catching
Mhm.
monsters and what do they evolve to? What is their light and dark form? Like, what's your team?
Yeah.
So much fun to play through that. I wanted to shout out Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze for no other reason other than it's just such a good game. I don't think it fits into any of these categories well enough, but it's kind of just like, wow, if you're looking for a 2D platformer with some challenge that's like way tougher than it looks given like the Donkey Kong kind of aesthetic, that game is awesome. I think you would really like it actually, Kate.
You know what? I've played the first two Donkey Kong Countries, and I love those games. So
Great
yeah,
game.
Freeze has been on my list, but I just
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I'll lend it to you. And finally, another one I just couldn't squeeze on there, Citizen Sleeper. Please play this game. Fantastic narrative. It's got some really cool dice mechanics where you make your decisions. And I just love the story about like, futuristic capitalism and what does it mean to be human? You're getting your like consciousness taken out of your body. So is the Reploid you're in still a human or is it not? Like, it's so fascinating. You have to
Like
play it.
Detroit.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's kind of
Oh, I
similar to
like it
that.
then.
Yeah, kind of similar.
I like it then.
Yeah. So anyway, those are my honorable mentions, and let's get into our first award of the show. It is our most surprising game of 2022. The description of the awards will be on the screen and everything. We already wrote them out, so we won't go through it again. But Kate, I would like to hear from you. What is your most surprising game of 2022?
My most surprising game of the year is not the first game on, or sorry, not the last game on my list of games that I've played based on your recommendation. So I must tip my
Ooh,
hat to you a few times here,
okay,
and this is
okay.
Unpacking.
Great
Um,
choice.
I fell in love with Unpacking. It's such a simple game. You sit like the premise is literally you keep moving and you have boxes that you bring with you and you unpack boxes, and it's a very light puzzle game in terms of like unpack this box, like the book has to go on the shelf or on like the bedside table. You can't put the book in the kitchen because that's silly. And so there's a little bit of like some logic puzzle to it, but largely you're just kind of unpacking boxes and sort of decorating this house like like there's nothing more to it. It's literally dragging things. That's the whole gameplay aspect to it. But what makes unpacking special is the journey you follow. It is such an emotional game, and I became so attached to it because you start out and it's like a childhood bedroom. And then the next level as you go on, you go through all the stages and the trajectory of how this person's life plays out from, moving out to school and having roommates and having a partner and moving back home when things didn't work out and how all the different stages. And as someone who's moved a few times in my life now and in very different circumstances, it was something I really related to. And it's amazing, like, just the level of storytelling with no dialogue at all, or no text, no nothing in the game. It's just you really get to feel like you get to know this person based on the things that she decides to bring with her, and then suddenly, at one house, something that's been there for the last 2 or 3 is gone, she's gotten rid of it, or she's replaced it with something else, or, she's mixing her things with the person that she's moved in with, and you don't need 2 clocks that go in this space, right? So you've got to mix and match, and it just tells such a beautiful human story in such a simplistic way that I thought it was going to be one of those games where I would get to or nominate it for like comfort game because I thought it'd just be
Mm-hmm,
kind of
mm-hmm.
cozy, nice. Look at this story, but it was just so emotional. Like it wasn't relaxing. It was like play a level, like go sit and like reflect on your life and have a cry, and like play a level the next day. And
It's not what you'd
man,
expect from a game like that, especially going
no.
into it. And you're right, it reminded me a lot of a game like Florence when I played it. Just a little unsuspecting indie game with a cute art style that ends up making you feel
Mhm,
something about your life on such a tangible
mhm.
level. Because like you said, we all have those little items that we've moved with a few times, or something that you've kept that used to be on your main shelf but now it's like in the back of your closet, something like that. I mean, I've got old game systems on the closet right up here beside where I'm sitting, and it's
Yeah,
like it's just cool
and
to have that experience virtually.
exactly, and there's things too that you bring with you, and you're like, I don't even know why, like, they're not displayed anywhere, they're packed away in a box, but you just can't bring yourself to get rid of them, they're sentimental, and I just really bought into the experience of this game, and I think if you have ever, like, moved around and you can relate to that in some way, like it is a powerful, powerful game. So thank you for making me play Unpacking because I probably wouldn't have really like paid it much attention otherwise. And one of the best games I've played 2022, hands down.
Well, all I ask is that you pass along the magic of unpacking to others,
Hmm.
so we can spread the joy and everyone can play. Because yeah, it is a very special game, and I think sticking to the definition of a game that was far better or far worse than our initial expectations, I think that is a great spot for unpacking too. Because there's no way you would anticipate it would be as good as it is, based on the premise. So great pick. I'm coming in really hot for mine on the first award. It is the most surprising game. It is Elden Ring. It is my most surprising game of the year.
So
Um,
I was wondering if Elden Ring would get on the board for you. Yeah.
no, here's the thing. I mean, I think when we first talked about Elden Ring on the show, like,
Mhm,
I think from my perspective at least, we both really liked it, but I think I came across as negative on it at times just because of how much you love the game. And
mhm.
I really liked Elden Ring as well. I'm obviously enough. And part of it is because I'm surprised of how much I liked it. I thought most surprising game. I mean, I liked it way more than I thought, so why not? But it's more than just how much I liked the game. I was surprised a few things about it too. I was surprised at just how well the open world structure worked in that context of a Souls game. One of the things I was saying right at the start was how much it helped someone like me that wasn't the best at the game, because I could just go over here and try this, and if I got stuck there, I could wander over here and find someone else to fight. And I was surprised that that wasn't as daunting as it sounded, before
Mhm.
playing the game. Like that sounded like, oh my god, not only am I going to have to fight all these guys, but I'm also going to need to navigate this giant world and figure out where I'm going and not get lost and have enough health and find the bonfires and have enough,
Mhm.
et cetera, et cetera. Like that's daunting, but it ended up
Yeah.
being so easy with the horse and the maneuverability and the fast travel. And I really was surprised at how approachable that made the
Yeah.
game for me.
And a very good map system. Take note,
Hmm.
people. Let us put map markers wherever we want. It's so nice.
Agreed. Agreed. And
Mhm.
you know, and then just visually as well, like you were mentioning before, like I think Jonah had written in the surprising vistas and the, I mean,
In Dark
amazing
Souls 3.
in Dark Souls 3. Like I think I was surprised on a different level with Elden Ring. I mean, we go into these games like God of War, Elden Ring, like they're all Horizon, all these AAA games, they all have views and amazing scenery these days. But I think Elden Ring just had something of a scope that was unexpected to me, as has been documented, pretty heavily. But I remember the first time you
Mhm.
kind of go down the elevator and you get to that underground sort of
Fun.
area down the
Yeah.
well. And I remember actually I was the first one of like, I think the people I was talking to,
Mhm.
including you,
You went there
to
before
have,
me
to have
even,
found
yeah.
it. And I was like, just like when you get down there, just wait. Like it was fucking shocking, like how
Yeah.
big that area is and just how expansive the game was. And so just for those reasons, I thought the game really blew me away. It was more playable, more enjoyable than I thought. Did I have my problems? Did I ever finish it? Of course I didn't, but I played for nearly 50 hours and enjoyed the hell out of it, which is a lot more than I played other games for.
And to be fair, for most games, that is easily finishing it. It's
Exactly,
just
yeah.
that Elden Ring is
Exactly.
a
It's
behemoth.
just too big. And I mean, I was
Yeah.
never going into it expecting to finish it, but I played a lot more than I
Mhm.
thought. And I got some other surprises too, because I have to razz the game a little bit. There's a lot of surprises, when you equip different equipment and you don't know what the stats do, you get surprised by what everything means. And
Yeah.
sometimes you use an item, you don't know what it's going to do. You get a surprise because nothing makes any fucking sense.
Sometimes you open a chest and oopsies,
Yeah.
it teleports halfway across the map.
So there's those kind of surprises too.
Yes.
But what a great game. I just had to award it something. I don't think it fit perfectly in any of these other awards for me. I know for you it might be comfort food. It's funny because you understand the story, unlike me. It's got a bunch of mechanics. You know, you could award it to a lot of these, but for me it was most surprising, and I'm happy to award it with such a distinction.
Well, that is a wonderful thing. You put a big smile on my face. I feel like I've won Game of the Year. It's not a competition, but I feel like I've won it already. So that's congratulations to me. But we will move on to our number 2, our best co-op game. And I am very interested to hear what you have to say about this because we've played a few co-ops together this year.
We have played a few co-op games together this year. We started Gears of War 2 as one that we played. We played some As Dusk Falls.
We played some As Dusk Falls. We played a few of the those like where we were here together.
That's right.
Kind of
I think some of those were last year actually,
Operation Tango I think was this year that we played. So
we played a lot, and you know what? It came down to 2 though, Kate. It came down to 2. It was a runner-up between. Oh, where is this game? I'm looking at my list now, frantically trying to find it. And I'm gonna give up because I can't do it. Oh, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Shredder's Revenge. I love that game, and it was good.
Yeah, we had a full watch for that game. We had the all 6 cast or something.
We had a fun night. We had a good time. But you know what? When I believed in my heart of hearts here, I had to clarify some rules with you, and I had to go with this game that's just taken over my life, and it is Fortnite. I cannot believe.
I can accept that because we have played Fortnite
That's
together.
True. We played
so
Fortnite.
I'm still on the board.
But here's the thing. Something like TMNT was a great night. Like, we had a blast playing that game. But Fortnite, I've literally now been playing once a week. Every night on the same, like, we have a scheduled night we play. Like, this is a thing in my life now where I play Fortnite. And it's such a blast. Like, the way that they make cooperative play fun since the building has been taken out is just phenomenal. It is so fun to get in there with your squad, and you can do these funny team activities. We can play Metallica in there now. We're doing all kinds of fun things. We make different squads that all match up, and they just keep the game so fresh. There's always a new character coming out. There's always going to be, new areas in the environment. The new season just started. There's a medieval vibe now. There's things covered in ice. There's bows where you can grapple onto places and like zip line yourself up into the sky. You select augments now, like in between each storm round, and get different bonuses which change how you play. There's just so much going on all the time. And when you play it that once a week, kind of really nice cadence, there's always something fresh when you log on. And it's just like this addiction of co-op goodness. And it's just so satisfying to win these battle royale games. I don't know what it is. It's just like you want to get that crown every time. And when you get it, it's just so, so sweet. But that game is just fantastic. And I don't see myself stopping this game anytime soon. It's probably going to be my co-op game next year as well.
That's fantastic. I think like it's important too to have a game like that where it's like, you get the squad together and it's like, it's almost more like hanging out than it is playing the game, but it is really, really enhanced when the game is fun. And then you get to that level where you're getting good enough that you sort of start doing silly things, or you just kind of like, you pick skins that all match for the round or something. Right. And it evolves past the game into this like more of an experience than anything else. And
that's right. We're currently trying to get a win where we gather around the last person and play the Metallica band Master of Puppets song around their dead body. Yeah. But the problem is you only have a split second to move before you kind of get frozen out of it. So unless you're like already crowding the guy, which when is that ever the situation? It's just impossible. But another shout out for Fortnite too, though, before we move along to yours. It looks so good with the new Unreal Engine 5 update. Yeah. Like the lighting is amazing. And the other thing I've noticed that is just really sharp, so next time you guys are playing, watch out for it, is when you're in a boat or on the water, the way that the light kind of goes through the water, you can see the riverbed or like the edges of the water going down. So it's actually like tangible, like where you would walk on it, I think is actually like visible to you. And it's just so realistic looking.
Right. It has like genuine depth of like where it would start to like get deeper. Yeah. That is so cool. Epic are such great developers. Like just shout out to Epic. If there was a developer of the year, it would be FromSoft. But if it wasn't FromSoft, it would be
Fair enough. But shout out to Fortnite, best co-op experience you could possibly have. Fantastic game. Keep it up. Can't wait to play again next Wednesday. Shout out to the squad.
Shout out to the boys. That's Darth Vader on drums over there,
That's right.
and Sexy Indy on guitar.
That's right. What's your funniest
Well,
game or your co-op game, Kate? Let's hear it.
my best co-op game. So this is where Detroit got shoved to recommendation because I personally think that the style of choose your own adventure, interactive story games are best played socially. I played Detroit with a friend of mine, and him and I had like the best time. We would like stress over choices and then spend like the next hour after playing like discussing, well, what would happen if we done, this other choice, or like, oh, what do you think, like, what do you think the consequence of this is going to be? And it's just such a wonderful social experience. But then a game like As Dusk Falls comes along, and it takes that concept and it bakes it straight into the game. So the difference between Detroit is, and why Dusk Falls is up here as the award winner, is because in Detroit you're passing the controller back and forth, and you're taking turns, you're making choices. And when it's a parkour section and Connor's on the screen, I'm playing because we can't let him die. I'll never forgive you if you kill Connor. But in As Dusk Falls, you are enforced to play with a team of people, with some friends, with a group, either online or in person. And whenever a decision comes up, instead of you guys talking about it and then, one person managing the controller, you actually play on your phone and you make those choices, like you vote for the choice you want to make. And so that little aspect adds so much. And I think it's really smart to encourage that kind of like social aspect to the game because it adds so much. And then As This Falls is just a fucking good game too. Like on top of that, it's so good. The consequence structure is amazing. I think another thing that really adds to the co-op element of this is that it's a lot less obvious, or it's a lot more difficult to predict what the choice is going to influence later in the game. Like I found a lot with Detroit, even though I love the story so much, I kind of had an idea of who I thought the characters were, and it was, while the choices definitely led to twists and turns I didn't expect, there were a lot of times where it was like, okay, with Connor, for example, like this is the route that is going to make him kind of like, gain a bit more humanity and kind of open up his consciousness. And then this is the one that's like the hard robotic. And there were definitely ambiguous choices, but there were some of those kind of more clear
Yeah,
black
sort of the
and
Mass
white.
Effect style where you choose Renegade
Yeah,
Paragon type of thing.
some of those paths, or like, am I going to be a pacifist, or am I going to be violent with Marcus' storyline where he's leading the rebellion? And the ambiguity is, is that going to be successful, and how is that going to affect the rest of the world? But less ambiguity is in like how it's going to affect that character individually. But in Dusk Falls, it was really, really shockingly difficult to tell if you were ever making a good choice. And I feel like, we would talk about it and we would stress, like we played it, the two of us, and then our other brother as well. So we had three, which was a good because we could always tie break with an uneven number. But, sometimes we make a decision, be like, oh God, that's not what we wanted. Or like,
Yeah.
something horrible would come as a consequence of what we did. Or sometimes we'd look at the options like, these are all absolutely terrible. What do we do?
Yeah, I think what you're talking about is getting distilled in my mind. It's something very well that goes. It's just explaining why the co-op nature of this is so good, and it's kind of like Mario Party in a way. Part of the reason Mario Party is so hectic and good for co-op and like multiplayer is because you can sit down and you just know some crazy shit is going to happen. Well, with this,
Yeah.
like you can sit down with As Dusk Falls with your group of people, and because it's kind of difficult to predict what those decisions are going to result in, it makes it kind of like that randomness of Mario Party that's like, oh my God, I can't believe, like, oh shit, I didn't expect that was going to happen. Like now we got to get our way out of this. And it's just these situations that come up so fast and you have to react. And we had just such a good time talking over the game and about the game while we were playing. You're right. Just awesome.
Yeah, exactly. And speculating of like what's going to happen next, or like, oh, I think that character, this is their secret kind of thing. So, and it was a really well written game. Obviously, that is going to contribute. The writing was fantastic. The characters were all really interesting. There was a lot of like, moral gray where you had to kind of decide if something was the right choice, what would be worth it? Where do things go too far? Where do you take self-preservation versus doing the right thing? I had a lot of really interesting themes, and it seems like it can end in a lot of different ways as
Hmm.
well. And with there being a very big plot twist at the end, I'm really hoping that we get another chapter because I would like more Dusk Falls in my life.
Yeah, and there's just so many things we need to learn about the game too. We'll have to do an episode on
Hmm.
it in the new year. We haven't actually talked about it on the
Hmm.
regular show yet, but we will because we
We
just
will.
finished it and it was fun. But for now, let's talk about our next award, which is of course the funniest game. And so this is one for you, especially Kate, that I am interested to hear your answer because, like you said, you don't play a lot of funny games. So what is it?
Funny games. I mostly have I laugh the most in games because I play a lot of games with friends, and we end up just cracking up at like us failing
Hmm.
as players or something that just went terribly unlucky or horribly wrong, and things like that. So my funniest game is actually
Oh my
your
god.
last game of the year in Metroid Dread.
Oh my god.
And Metroid Dread is not a particularly funny game. I was a little limited, I'd say, by I didn't really play tons of
Yeah,
games
fair
that
enough.
were funny. I actually considered Ragnarok because Ragnarok is genuinely
It is a
hilarious
very funny
sometimes.
game. Yeah.
But I picked Metroid Dread because there was something about this game. Me and my best friend played it, and we struggled so much with the controls of this game. I don't know why. It's not usually an issue either of us have, but we just could not wrap our head around how to how to control things. And to be fair, it gets quite complicated.
It does.
Metroid Dread. Like a lot of the time you're holding down like three buttons to do something. Like there's a shoot button, but if you want to shoot a missile, you have to hold down the missile button and then press shoot. But then if you want to aim, you have to hold down the button to aim and then aim while holding down the missile button and then press shoot. And so you're doing a lot of complicated things, and it can get a little hectic because there's some pretty tough boss fights in the game
Hmm.
and some pretty challenging platforming sections as well. So and then you have the grappling hook for all the tough platforming sections, and like that is hold down the grappling hook button and hold down the aim and then press shoot, but don't let go of the grappling hook button by mistake because then you'll just fall. And so it's a complicated control scheme. And the nature of how we played this game is we'd play like a night and then we'd spend like a month before we'd play again because
Which does not help
um
the control scheme.
which is not how, but it was just like we had a group that was playing a lot of Gloomhaven, and this was our game for when the other guys weren't around to Gloom, and so we're like, oh great, we'll have a Metroid Dread night. So we played it super infrequently, and every time we pick it up, we're like, oh god, how do we play? We like struggle, and so it just became so funny that by the time we were like halfway through the game, we'd sit down to play and we'd hand the controls to whoever's gonna start, and we just start laughing and then be like, all right, like go ahead, what are you gonna do? And they'd be like, all right. Be like, okay, we get to a puzzle, like, okay, shoot that missile, and they just like turn into a ball. Because they did like totally the wrong thing. Or we'd be like on a platform section and be like, okay, well, you gotta grapple that way, and they'd like grapple but not stick to it and just fall and then like shoot a missile or just do something so outrageous.
That's amazing.
And it just every single time we played, there was like ridiculous stuff that happened just based on the controls of this game alone. That it became this stupid narrative of like we had a running joke of like, okay, when you get into a boss fight, the first thing you want to do is turn into a ball 3 times and then shoot a missile backwards because that will intimidate them. And it colored my experience. So now when I think of Metroid Dread, despite it being a good game, I really like the main thing that I think about that is sticking with me of this game is just how funny, like, we'd just be crying because it'd be like, okay, we know how to solve the puzzle now, but you're not doing it. You're touching every single button but the button that solves
That's
it.
so funny because my experience is so different because I played it over the course of like
Hmm.
2 weeks by myself and I was not really having a
Yeah.
lot of those issues because you get kind of locked in on the controls and that's
Exactly. You
amazing
get
though.
used to it, you learn it. After we play for an hour, we'd be significantly better. But it was always that first time we'd sit back down and we go, oh, here we go again.
My God. Well, this is the only podcast where Metroid Dread will ever be referred to as the funniest game of the year. So there you have it. The awards have been won by Metroid Dread.
2 years in a row. It's our
That's
first
right.
game ever to win 2 years in a row.
That's right. All right. Well, my funniest game was none other than the obvious choice. Now, I don't really play a lot of funny games either. Usually for me, it's like if I play a Phoenix Wright or something, there's some good humor in those. But let me tell you, if you've ever watched the Marvel movie Guardians of the
Guardians of the
Galaxy,
Galaxy.
you might have a thing
Yeah.
or an idea or two about how funny this game might be, because the relationship that the Guardians have in those movies and the banter back and forth and the razzing each other and the joking and the white lies to deceive each other for no reason other than just to get under each other's skin and just on and on. That is this game. And the Guardians of the Galaxy, well, I mean, the game itself was pretty fun. Wasn't the best game of the year or anything, but the funniest game is hands down Guardians of the Galaxy. And I mean, this game did something that games don't often do. Like we said, we don't play a lot of funny games. Like this game had me actually laughing on the couch at times, just because like you would at a Marvel movie, right? Like there's a couple quotes I wrote down. I just watched a couple little scenes from the game because it's been a while since I played, but these scenes just come back and they're so funny. Like they're talking about who would be a better leader. And then Drax is like, I would trust Peter Quill's incompetence over the rodent's lies. And like they're just like debating these things. And then there's another scene with Drax too, where they're like, you're like going through a planet, you're on this journey, you're like going across the crust and killing enemies and all this stuff. And Quill's like, oh look, we're up to the fortress, like it's getting larger on the horizon. And Drax is like, no, we're just getting closer. Like he just shuts him down. And just those one-liners from Drax just kill me. But
you know what? Thinking about those Drax lines, it almost reminds me of Kratos. Like he's kind of got a similar sort of humor going on.
They steer, but instead of being like, Kratos doesn't miss the jokes. I think he just doesn't care.
He's
just so
blunt. Just shutting them down.
But yeah, it's just beyond the Drax jokes though, there's just a lot of other stuff going on. Rocket and his own relationship with Groot is hilarious. The way they kind of can only communicate. There's this point in the game where you can get a llama or some space version of a llama to come on your ship, and it's just constantly eating the wiring or like leaving the fridge open or just doing messy things, and Rocket's freaking out. It's just these little dynamics that you get. And I think it's the type of humor, again, like we're saying, some of these things like unpacking is very specific to video games. I think this humor is too, because unlike the movies, you don't really get a lot of the downtime between the characters. You don't really get a lot of like, oh, well, they're on the journey. Like, what are the side conversations they're having? Like, how do Gamora and Drax go back and forth about like how to spend the ship's finances or something? And what does that conversation look like? And there's some of it builds on the humor, but other of it's just like building a deeper relationship with these characters so that the funny parts, like they resonate more because you see where they're coming from. And I just love this cast so much that I really hope they get to make another game, because it was legitimately very funny. And I would buy this game specifically for the humor, which is something I don't think I've said about a game before. But that's how good it is. It truly is something special.
That's awesome. And I think we said when that game came out, it's going to live or die by how good the group dynamic is. So knowing that is like a standout part of the game is a huge recommendation.
It's funny. I mean, I know some people did have some complaints about Star-Lord and whatnot. I mean, I can see why, but all in all, like as a cast, it's an ensemble cast game, and it's great.
That is fantastic. And that will take us into number 4, our best comfort food game. So take us away. It's not Monster Sanctuary for you. So
it is not. It is not. It is not Monster Sanctuary. And you know what? This was, I will tell you right now, when I sat down to write down my award winners for this year, this was the easiest award for me to give.
It's Marvel Snap, isn't it?
It's Marvel Snap. Is yours Marvel Snap too?
No, but Jonah's was Marvel Snap.
Okay,
so
it's Marvel Snap. There is no debate what the best comfort food game is this year. I play this game anywhere that I'm comfortable because I've got my phone with me no matter where I go. Look, this game just feels so nice. It's a comforting Marvel little branded package. There's that delicious comic book art. You get those dopamine hits of upgrading your cards in a way that is actually attainable without doing a lot of microtransactions. Like you don't really have to pay any money. I did buy the battle pass for one season, not for the second season. Didn't feel like it was really worth it 2 times, but it was cool. The point of the game is it's so bite-sized, like we've talked about before on the show, and it's just like the one more game mentality of the way that it's so short and snappy is just perfect. It is one more game, one more game, one more game. Oh, if I just play one more ongoing card, then I can finish this challenge and I can have enough tokens to upgrade this card so it's a better border around it. Oh, now it can have 3D text if I just do one more game and unlock this again. It is just this game of feeling good about yourself. I feel like I win enough. And it's just a joy to see like what's the next character you're going to unlock. You know, what kind of decks can you make around these characters? It's fun and comfortable to make the decks because they're so small. There's just such an approachability about it, and you feel like you're pulling off some really cool combos. You know, you never feel like you're completely out of most of the games you play unless you're a total idiot. So it makes you feel like good about yourself. It's just good vibes. And if you have a cell phone, which I'm assuming you do, you owe it to yourself to play Marvel Snap, because this game is something else. And I don't think I've been as addicted to a game since Slay the Spire as I have been to this game. This is the new addiction right here, everybody.
Mm-hmm. Well, card games seem to clean up on comfort food.
Slay the Spire is, you know, a lot of it too for me is the fact that it's on my phone. Like, this game is perfect for mobile. I know you've played it on Steam, you've played it on the computer. I mean, I'm sure it's great there as well, but the fact that it's so perfect on your phone, like, it just adds to that comfort food ability. Because I was playing Monster Sanctuary on my computer, sitting right here. I'm in my chair right now. This isn't that comfortable. I can play Marvel Snap in the bathtub.
That is true. You can play Marvel Snap in the bathtub. You can play it on the airplane. You can play it at work.
That's right.
You can play it when
I
you're
would never play it
shopping.
at work. I would never play it at work, Kate. Come on.
Oh, I never.
I would never do that on company time.
That's never where I play the most ever. Okay. I did not put Marvel Snap as my game.
I'm surprised by that, honestly. I thought we might have tied, because I know you've been playing a lot.
We almost tied because I put Monster Sanctuary.
Okay. Nice.
So I took your second pick. The difference with me here is that while I love Marvel Snap and I completely 100% agree with everything you said, I don't feel as invested in Marvel Snap as I do in a game like Monster Sanctuary. I personally really like a sense of progression when I play a game. So I gravitate more towards story games or games that have a very clear kind of like prompt versus like, you know, crafting open world, like Minecraft, like build something kind of stuff. And Marvel Snap fulfills that for me in the sense of like there's the progression of going through the track and unlocking all the cards, but largely you are just playing matches and there's not a story and
just playing matches, having none. Oh God, how dare you reduce this game?
It sounds reductive. I don't mean to claim that as a criticism. It is exactly what the game intends. It's fantastic. It does everything it sets out to do. It's a 10 out of 10 for what it wants to do. It's just not the style of game I normally get too into. So I snap. I usually snap every day. I do my quests, not at work, obviously. No, come on. How would you say that? But I snap. But what I liked most this year for comfort was Monster Sanctuary. There was maybe a span of a couple months where I played it, and it just became my go-to game of like curl up at the end of the evening. I've got an hour before I'm going to go to bed. You know, I put some YouTube on and I'm half paying attention to that, and with the other half I'm fiddling and playing Monster Sanctuary. And that to me is like the comfort game. It's like, what do I do to relax, wind down? It's just positive. It's a nice world to be in. It's pretty. It's got cool biomes. The monsters are all really fun and unique, and it's exciting to see. You know, you go to the next area and what do you find? And there's like, oh, there's a cool snail. It shells crystals instead of, you know, the swirly bit they normally have, which probably has a name.
The shell.
and I should know it. Shell. And it was just fun. You know, there was a lot of cute mechanics. It wasn't overly complicated, but there was some depth, so it struck that balance very nicely for me. You know what? I'm so relaxed thinking about Monster Sanctuary. I'm getting tired. I'm starting to fall asleep. I can't talk. Monster Sanctuary was a great game. We ranked it pretty highly on our creature capture list, and I
We
think
did.
when a creature capture game is good, that to me is the perfect nostalgia comfort food type of game.
That's true. And nostalgia is a big part of Monster Sanctuary as well. Like it almost
Yeah.
won this award for me. A lot of it's to do with like those
Mm-hmm.
aesthetics kind of look like Maple Story and it kind of
Yeah.
controls like Maple Story. And then there's the
Mm-hmm.
Pokemon thing to it. And yeah, it was a good runner up for me for the same reason
Mm-hmm.
for sure. But here we go. Here's one of our favorite categories coming up next, and this is always one that I'm most excited, I think, to see your answer. Aside from Game of the Year, just because of how specific this one can get. And so
Mm-hmm.
this is what is the best new mechanic that you saw in a game this year,
Or use of a
or
like
use of a mechanic?
pre-existing.
Yes, yes.
Um, okay, so I played this game like in January, or I played this game in January and February. So it was way back at the start of the year, and I was super stoked when I realized that it does qualify. I played Fury and I fucking loved it.
Nice.
Fury is genuinely one of my favorite games of all time now. It is so incredibly weird. If you've not heard of Fury, look it up right now because I'm going to explain it and it's going to sound like an absolute mess. It is half okay, so it's a boss rush game. It is half a dual stick bullet hell shooter and half a top down, fast paced melee action game. That's a lot. Sometimes it feels kind of soulsy, especially there's like a boss you fight in 2D where you have to like with an emphasis on like carefully time like attacks and dodges and parries. And with every boss you're learning boss patterns and like you'll fail quite a few times before you finally beat them. They have many phases that you learn and they change and evolve throughout the fight. And it just kind of swaps seamlessly between all of these different types of gameplay just mid fight. And it doesn't feel jarring. You'd expect it to, but it feels like a really cohesive package despite being like three different games in a trench coat. And so I've just never seen a game kind of take concepts that don't normally fit together and put them into such a well-designed and tight package. And
Hmm.
I've never seen anything like Fury. I've never played anything like Fury. The studio has a couple other games that are nothing like it. It's this totally weird. They kind of like did a super giant sort of thing where they're like,
Just
we just
different games,
vomited on
yeah.
this page and it's beautiful. It's got this like neon, like cyberpunky samurai kind of aesthetic with like Carpenter Brute kind of like electronic music that somehow fits. And you're fighting like criminals. There's this whole story about you breaking out of jail, and then a crazy like space invasion finale thing that goes on where you're like a big like mech laser fight. And it's just so incredibly bizarre, but I got like so into this game and it is very difficult as a thing. Like it's just boss challenges. So like you just fight a boss 15 times until you beat them. That kind of mentality of it. And I can genuinely remember a time where I was playing and a friend of mine, we were just like, I don't know, we were just chatting and I was telling him, I was like, I'm stuck on this boss, like, whatever, like, oh, it's getting late, I'm stuck on this boss. And so he's like, oh, just stream it, like, I want to see the boss. So I ended up playing, I think, till like 2 a.m. one night. And I had to like get up for work the next day or something, but I was just so determined, like, I'm getting better. I can beat this boss. I'm really good at the like action kind of things. I'm really good at the
Hmm.
parry, the dodges, but I'm having trouble with the bullet hell kind of section. I think I can get it. And they're quite long, like with the multiple phases, and it's got a really good checkpoint system of like your health you have like kind of like almost like a
Regenerating
life.
health.
It's kind of like a life sort of system where you have like 3 lives, but if you make it to the next phase, your lives all return.
It's just a checkpoint then.
So
Yeah.
but if you die, you start at the beginning. So it's not
Oh,
like
I see. It's got like
a hundred percent
like
checkpoint.
checkpoints within checkpoints almost.
Yeah, it's a pseudo checkpoint. What's cool is it happens to the boss too. So like when they knock one of your things back, they can regen health as well. So it's got this really like ebb and flow to it. But anyway, me and this friend we stayed up till like 2 a.m. because I was like, okay, just one more time. um, oh, it's just so good. And it has like hard modes. Like I've gone back and tried to like perfect bosses, which is something I don't normally do because I like completing a game, but I'm not a perfectionist where like knowing that I've beaten it is enough for
Hmm.
me. I don't have to beat it 100%. But I genuinely, this is one of the only games I've ever gone back to and played like the bonus hard mode that was unlocked afterwards, just because I had this void of like, I don't have any more Fury to play, and this would give me more Fury to play.
It's the best feeling.
Yeah, it's a good game. It's weird. It's good.
I should play it. So, for my best mechanic, this is something we've talked about on the show already because I'm giving it to, can you guess, As Dusk Falls, for the way that it handles its decision making and the usage of it. Because, and you hit on this when you were talking about the game, so I don't want to be too redundant, but the way that they change the controls from something like Detroit or Until Dawn or Heavy Rain or any of those other choice-based sort of narrative games, and they put it from the controller onto your phone and they make it so multiple people can connect at once, is the best new kind of mechanic for those games that could possibly be. And it's not just for the multiplayer reason, which is obviously better than passing the controller back and forth. It's because it's also more approachable for people that don't play a lot of games. And those are inherently games that those people may be drawn to, because something like Call of Duty or, you know, God of War or Elden Ring or whatever is very action focused, it's going to be harder than something that's more like, oh, take your time, make a choice. And the fact that it's not a controller and you can use your phone, familiar device.
Even with the other games that you mentioned to compare to, like Detroit and stuff, they typically tend to, well, they don't have lots of gameplay, they do quick time events, which is difficult for someone who's not super familiar with the controller, because it's like, press triangle really quickly. And it's like, well, which one was triangle? And then you've lost it. So they still have that kind of barrier in terms of accessibility, even though they're just story games.
Yeah, exactly. But everyone's got a phone. Everyone's familiar with their own unique device. Like even passing someone an Xbox controller or something, they're like, "Oh, what the hell is this? Like, how do I hold it?" They have that weird, like, I don't touch the shoulder buttons grip on.
Grip.
And it's like, it's like, okay, mom. But so the way it uses the phone is genius. It's just great for getting people into the game, but it lets anyone join in. And with the nature of the game being like, let's vote on these choices and see what like the democracy decides is what this character will do, is a great combination. You know, it's not implemented super well. Like we had some issues with getting my controls off the Xbox controller onto my phone. There was some issues with like the TV would still go to sleep mode and I'd have to touch the control stick even though I wasn't using the controller. Like weird stuff. Yeah. I think it could be done actually. Interestingly, with a way of like, if we wanted to improve this mechanic, would be like give us a setting where we can't see what each other are voting, because a lot of times we'd be like deliberating on the couch playing together of what, like, okay, are we going to enter this house or like run past it? But then we would like deliberate on the couch and then I'll just vote for the same thing. Whereas it would be cool if there was a way to like make it a mystery and actually see what the vote would be had we not chosen our guesses out loud. But the other thing which this game adds on top of that, for like, we were pretty harmonious, right? Like I said, figuring out our answers. There could be other groups or bigger groups where they don't all agree and you get the vote going on. But you can also do an override in this game too, which is like, no, you know what? Screw you guys. Like, I really want to go with the first choice here. I really want to like climb down the fire escape instead of going, you know, out the front door. And you can override it, and no matter what the vote is, you'll get your choice. And there was a few times where we did that when we were playing too, and it just made that, and we in the room we'd be like, oh my god, like, you know, I can't believe you went for the override. It just adds those dramatic moments. And I think you know, like you're saying, it's kind of part and parcel with the co-op nature. Like these mechanics make the co-op as fun as it was, but I think these mechanics are really just so strong. And although As Dusk Falls isn't my favorite narrative of you know, a lot of these choice-based games, in terms of you know, the controls and like the way they allow the game to be played in a multiplayer way, I know there's some other ones that do cool things like online, or you can do like a pass the controller mode, but for my money, this is the best way to do it, because it allows the choices to be multiplayer, not just the QuickTime events, which is the pass the controller version.
Yeah, 100% harsh agree. And you touched on online as well, which I think is also a good thing. So easy, just hop on online, just join the server. You could have, you know, I don't know if there's a limit, but it's a very large amount of players you can have as well. And it's cool, you know, it's a good way to spend time with someone. It's hard to play games online with people unless they're into like live service games or like, you know, I guess there's a lot of multiplayer games, but it's hard to play this kind of a game with someone online. And this is just, you know, hop in, get your phone out. Awesome. We're all here.
Exactly.
That is a good pick. That is a very, very good pick. Dusk Falls is now our first ever game to be on a list from both of us, I think.
That's a good point. It's won 2 awards in the same year.
2 awards in the same year. The first, let's see if anything else can mirror that, which leads us up to number 6, the Metal Hellsinger Award. I mean, the best music / soundtrack
Yes.
of the year.
Amazing.
And I think we both went with Metal Hellsinger here. Let's not beat around the bush too hard.
Okay, so let me just say 2 things about this award. Number 1, any other year, Guardians of the Galaxy would have won this award because the soundtrack in that game, let me just bring it up here, is amazing. It's like 80s rock. It has, I got the Spotify playlist here right now. I'm not going to play it for anyone, obviously, but I mean, it's coming up here. You got Turn Me Loose by Loverboy. You got Don't Fear the Reaper. You got White Wedding, Hit Me With Your Best Shot, Hangin' Tough, I Ran So Far Away. Like, they're just on and on. These banger songs. There's like 79 songs in the whole soundtrack. Not all of them are licensed, but I mean, it's just an incredible like mixtape like you'd expect from the Guardian style stuff, and it's fantastic. But anyways, all that being said, that goes to show just how phenomenal Metal Hellsinger's soundtrack was. The whole thing all the way through. Where do you want to start with this one, Kate? It's just like the greatest gaming soundtrack of all time.
Yes. Number 2 point that we should make is, come on, this was the only award. Well, I watched the Game Awards this year. The only award I was like, I want Metal Hellsinger to win so bad. I wanted Metal Hellsinger to take this award more than I wanted Elden Ring to win Game of the Year. And I would never complain or, be a jerk online about it afterwards.
Mhm.
But goddamn.
That's why we can give it to our award show here tonight instead of the real Game Awards.
That's really why we are here today. Is to tell you that Two Feathers did an amazing job. So for anyone who hasn't seen Metal Hellsinger, it is basically What If Doom, but it's a rhythm game. So they have an amazing like metal soundtrack, and you have to shoot like on beat. You get a lot of different weapons, and they all have a slightly different cadence. Like, for example, like I really liked the dual wielding pistols because you kind of shot on every single
Those are my
beat,
favorite ones too.
Whereas the shotgun, you'd kind of shoot and then you'd like reload and then you'd shoot again on like a subsequent beat. Even the reloading you had to do in time to the music, dashing was in time to the music. It was 100% built around this soundtrack, which was absolute bangers. So Two Feathers did all of the instrumentals, but it's a heavy metal soundtrack, and they got in like an all-star cast of singers. We have like System of a Down and Ginger and Soilwork and Dark Tranquillity and Arch Enemy and Trivium and Lamb of God. Like, they just got some massive singers to sing the tracks. And I think the best part of Hellsinger to me is when you start out, it's kind of got one of those like counters that shows like how well you're doing. So you start out like 0 times and you're at 2 times score and 3 times score. Kind of like Guitar Hero, exactly. The better you do, the higher your score starts to go. And it begins with just the music, but it's when you hit that highest score that the vocals kick in. And there are not many times I've ever felt more badass in a game than when you're just really in the rhythm and you're just shooting like, hell demons, and then the lyrics kick in and you're just like, you're sitting in your chair, you're bopping your head, you're tapping your toes. Holy fuck, it's so cool. It's such a cool game.
This game makes you move. It's like, it is a rhythm game. Like, if you ever played a rhythm game, like obviously DDR, you got to stand up, but like, Guitar Hero, any of those, you kind of move along with the music, right? Like, this game is the same way. I could not help myself I was tapping my foot, but then your head starts going. You have to keep with the beat. And the way, you're right, it scaffolds on itself of like the drums and some bass and some guitar. The way it adds up, like the game is built around the rhythm first and foremost. It is a shooter for sure, but it's a rhythm game first. And it matches those mechanics with the soundtrack, which is so phenomenal, and the reason it's winning the award. And with that said, we want to show you guys just a couple samples of our favorite songs from the game. So, Kate, what's your favorite song from Metal Hellsinger? Let's listen to a few seconds of it.
Pretty confident going in, it would be the song featuring Ginger, because I am a massive fan of that band. But actually, listening back to it, I listened to the whole soundtrack today, and I was like bopping along. I was sitting at my desk at work just like headbanging. My coworkers are looking. Okay. So I got to this song, and this song just hit me. Like, I felt like I was playing the game. I had adrenaline rush up. I was so in the moment. My favorite song in this game is Stygia, which is the
Okay.
song that features Alyssa White Gluz from Arc Enemy.
Okay. Well, let's listen to a little bit of this one now. Here it is. Ooh, I'm excited.
Okay.
Okay, so I picked my favorite song as well. And I've got to say, I went through a lot of trials and tribulations deciding which one I was going to go with. But at the end of the day, Kate, it looks like we're going to listen to some Ginger anyways, because mine was Burial at Night featuring
Yes!
Tatiana from Ginger. So I'll play some of that now as well. All right, well, there we have it. And that leads us to our next award, which is the most screenshottable game of the year. Basically, our way of saying, wow, this game is beautiful. So, Kate, I'm interested to know, what is the most screenshottable game that you played on this year, the year of our Lord? I don't know why I said that. 2022.
You're Lord Paz from Metal Hellsinger. So I've ran 2 games already you've suggested, Unpacking, and of course you lent me Metroid Dread.
Mm-hmm.
I am onto a game, the 3rd game on the list that you recommended
Wow,
to me.
I'm on a roll. I'm kind of winning these
You're on
awards
a roll.
twice.
Yeah, you are on a roll. It's okay, Elden Ring made it on your list. I've won already. But this is gonna come totally out of left field because it is not a recent game. But I'd never played it before. I played What Remains of Edith Finch.
Ooh, good one.
Now, this game is pretty. It definitely is good visually. It is dated. So it's less of the wow factor of, like, the new modern AAA graphics and more of the amazing art direction, the design of the game, and just the outstanding creativity on display here. So the premise is you're this girl, you go to like your old family house, which is really not up to safety regulations in the slightest.
No, it
It's
is
just
not.
sort of bits of house kind of like piled and built on top of each other. It's super wonky, super fantasy. Kind of think almost like the burrow from the Harry Potter movies and how like topsy-turvy that house is. It's kind of got a little bit of that energy, but you have this like extended family that have all like tragically died. You are the last Finch remaining, and you kind of walk through the house. There's a little bit of like puzzle solving and like little like kind of almost mini games. There's some gameplay involved, but for the most part, it's very much like an interactive kind of story. And you kind of relive like how each character in the family had died. And it has this really nice overarching narrative about, like family and loss and like moving on and like, her being a Finch and what that meant to her. But to get to the point of it being really visually interesting is that every time you kind of go into one of these characters' stories, it totally changes art style. You are put into some like crazy new environment. Like you spend half of the game totally outside of the house and just in these like beautiful dreamscapes. So like in one time you're like at one point you're a cat and you're like, jumping in trees and you become various sorts of animals. And then in another one, you are like in a bath, like one of the kids drowned in a bath, but it does this like
Yeah,
underwater world where you're like swimming
that's
around
right.
in the bath, like as if it's the ocean, but like, there's like a little frog toy swimming around beside you, like all the toys the kid had in the bath. And then later you're like in a campy, like 80s comic book murder mystery kind of story. And I don't want to spoil all of them because it's just such a delight. But the one that sticks to me the most, and I won't spoil what it
Is it
is,
is it the
but
fish?
It's the fish. You are chopping fish at some cannery, and it's superimposed on another story taking place. And it blew my mind, and just how you're watching this fantasy kind of story unfold, but over top of it, you got this like fish chopping that ties in really well
Mm-hmm.
with their character's life. And just, I feel like every 20 minutes in this game, you're having a like wow moment of, oh my god, like look what we're doing next. Like, it's so creative, it's so beautiful. It really straddles this line between like crazy over the top fantasy, but also grounded in the story of the world and the characters. The house itself is really nice. You get some nice vistas, and some just really nice like design work put into the house itself. And I just was like blown away by this game. I played it on Steam, and it was like the original version of the game. I noticed on a PlayStation sale recently that there's like a upgraded version of the game that's got like
Right.
PS5
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
up-res and all that stuff, and it was on sale. So I bought the game after I'd played it so that I can play it again at some point on the PlayStation with like upgraded visuals. And I haven't even touched that yet, but it's still winning this award.
What better evidence
So,
is there of the best visuals than
yeah.
when you buy an upgraded
This is
award?
this is one of the games that like kicked off indies being a big deal. And first of all, thank you. Indies are a big deal. But second of all, like, this game just deserves all the recognition it gets. It's amazing.
100% agree. What a game. I would never have thought to put it for most screenshottable, but you're right. It does have, not
Yeah.
in the like the beauty moments, but in like the way of like, wow, what an amazing thing to
It's
see.
just so creative. It's
It
the
is.
creativity that comes through in almost every single moment, and just the variety of the different things that you do. Like, you could have won more surprising very, very
Yeah.
easily, because you never know what's around the corner, but it's beautiful.
Great game. That fish scene is one of the best scenes in any game ever. In
The fish
anything ever.
scene.
Anything ever. It's amazing.
The fish scene. Yeah. Oh my god, the
I
fish
love it.
scene.
Well, my most screenshottable game, I went more of the traditional route in terms of, wow, this game is just beautiful. But it might not be what a lot of people expect, because it is a 2D game. It is a DLC. It is Cuphead, the delicious last course. How
Yes.
can this not win the most screenshottable game? And there's one argument for it, which is that this cartoon, for those of you that don't know what Cuphead is, you should look it up. It looks like a Saturday morning cartoon, but it's playable. It literally looks like something you would see on TV on like an 80s kind of Saturday morning Mickey
So, like,
Mouse,
kinda like
Tom and
old Mickey
Jerry
Mouse.
sort of
Yeah.
style art. But it's just immaculate. There's never anything that's out of place. There's no details missed. There is no level of polish that is spared in making this game. It just looks fantastic. And the way everything moves around, I would say it's better in movement than it is just like still screenshots. So that's maybe one little disservice. But if we can expand screenshottable to, record short videos, then it really
Record
counts.
15-second clip.
But I mean, the variety of this game has such a distinct style despite having such a variety of enemies. I'm just looking back on some bosses now, and there's these different
It's
angel devil kind of one.
the way they move too, like the
Mm-hmm.
squash and stretch that's so like
Yeah, it's
canonical to that time period, right? Like, I always remember the dragon, he like sucks in air and shoots fire, but it's like his whole body just and then
exactly. He
gets
puffs
pushed
up like
out
a
like
big
it's like a
bellows,
bellow.
and then
Yeah.
it goes out. It's very much like, if you notice, like, who's the guy in Bugs Bunny that would always get like a piano dropped on him, and he would get like compressed down into like a
The
slinky.
coyote,
Yeah,
Wile E.
and then
Coyote,
pop
yeah.
back up, and he'd be super tall. It's just like that kind of animation, but there's the angel and the devil coming from each side of the screen. You're dodging things. There's a cow with a suction vacuum, kind of like Luigi's Mansion, like blowing things and then spitting them back out at you. And it is just such a spectacle the whole time. And I don't know how they make everything so bright and vibrant and animated, and yet it still all just makes visual sense. There's sometimes you can play a game and it just gets a little cluttered, or you're like, oh, there's so much going on this screen. I'm a little confused of what my eye should be paying attention to. And Cuphead just has this incredible way that they balance their colors, and they balance the art direction of the game between the backgrounds and the foregrounds, where you can somehow pay attention to all these beautiful scenes and still be picking out details and little animations here and there. But your eye can also keep track of all the things you're trying to dodge and all these little pink icons that you can parry off of. And it just is this great balance of visual styles that I think works so well for the type of gameplay and the boss rush sort of bullet hell thing it's going for. And the other thing for Cuphead, which is just icing on the cake, is the overworld, which you walk around, sort of the
Yes.
map you go on. It kind of ditches the cartoon style that the levels go for, and instead it's almost like a painterly aesthetic kind of storybook that you walk around, almost like an old school book. You know, like in Kingdom Hearts, they go in that Winnie the Pooh book.
Yeah, and the Winnie the
Like
Pooh.
it's almost like walking on that. For anyone that sees that,
Mhm.
has seen that before, and they just do such a pristine job. Like I couldn't imagine these characters could be improved in any way. Like this is the best they could be. The only thing that reminds me to that level of polish in the character designs, if a recent memory of something I've played, is surprisingly it's Shovel Knight. I really love the way some of those bosses are designed. But when
Mhm.
you put in the factor of how they move and how they animate and all the little things that go into every little
Yeah.
essence of these characters, like Cuphead is just on another level.
Well, I feel like there's a reason that no other game has ever looked like Cuphead. Like the amount of
Mhm.
work they must put into doing all these hand-drawn, like beautiful animations and the level to which they pull it off at is outrageous. Like Cuphead, totally deserving. I forgot that DLC came out. I
Mhm.
was trying to think of what you
Mhm.
put, but yeah, like clear,
Yeah, it
clear
was an
winner.
easy winner for me for sure. And a game which is like, it's a really good game. I don't know if I would have put it in any of these other categories, but it's so perfect for Screenshottable that it has to go. Is it my turn to ask you first? I think it is, right? I think it is. No, it's your
I've lost
turn.
track.
No, it's
It's
you.
my
You're asking
turn?
me. Go.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you. All right, go, go, go. This is number 8. The award where I find out if God of War is your game of the year, or if it's here, because this is, of course, the favorite character award. And oh God, I can't take the suspense. Just tell me. Just tell
It is. I know.
me.
I deliberated on this for so long.
Hmm.
I didn't know what to do. And you were telling me a story before we started this podcast that you didn't want to include God of War on your list because you hadn't beaten the game and you didn't feel right awarding it something when you hadn't played enough to
Hmm.
really see, right? And this is where I draw my line, is that I can't give God of War my game of the year if I've not beaten it. Just
Hmm.
because I just think that feels wrong. There's been sometimes we've talked about games on the show and we've kind of had a change of heart or a different opinion. And I just don't feel right doing that. And so this is where I'm going to give our boy Kratos my favorite character of the year.
There's Sindri and
I know
Atreus.
there's Sindri and Atreus.
Oh.
I know. But come on.
Oh, it's Kratos.
It's
Yeah, it's
Kratos. It's
Kratos.
Kratos.
Always was.
I mean, here's the thing that I would say about Kratos. It's an interesting argument for performance because I think a lot of the time people go for the funny characters or the characters like Sindri or the characters that have more dialogue. They show more range. Like people always talk about, oh, look at this character's range, like they can play any kind of role. Whereas Kratos, well, he does have certainly a lot more range than he's shown in the past in terms of digging into his more emotional side. He definitely is a lot more stoic and one note than a lot of main characters, and I think a lot of characters actually get criticized for being that way and being kind of like, oh, that character's very one note. And I wouldn't say Kratos is one note, but he's certainly more along those lines than other main characters. But that's the thing. It just doesn't matter because their performance is so strong.
I would argue that Kratos is actually a very deep and complex character.
Yeah,
He's just he keeps everything very guarded, very closely. So when he does have, those emotional scenes, it's typically quite like subtle and more kept to his chest, like instead of having a big outburst where he's like
right.
crying or like like rearing from something. It's maybe one very quick like stern word, and then he's like, okay, like calm, back in myself, hold the emotions in, but it's still portraying the same thing. It's just he's so like stoic.
Exactly. And I think that's kind of what I was getting to, was just sort
Hmm.
of the way that this character is portrayed and clearly does have those feelings, but doesn't. There's just that subtlety of the human expression that you can sort of pick up by the lines on someone's face, or like a little glance or like a little movement that's kind of, it's lost in translation in games a lot of the time, I feel, just in comparison to what an actor can do on a movie or someone in person. But I truly think, and as I've moved through the game, I'm towards like the back section of it now for sure. And there's been moments where I've been able to sort of pick those little lines out on Kratos' face, or the way he'll, like, there's one scene where Atreus comes for a hug and then he kind of lets go, and then you see him kind of have that hesitation moment and then go back in for more of the hug. And it's just those tiny human moments are just being so knocked out of the park. And for a character that comes from a beginning, which a lot of people probably playing God of War don't even know those games existed on the PS2 and have no idea, as was evidenced by that one post online saying that it would be great if they did some Greek mythology in God of War in the future.
Yeah.
Which is hilarious.
It would be great.
But I mean, the way this character just had a glow up from, you know, mindless killing machine PS2 avatar who looks cool with his paint on his body, which is loosely explained, to being almost, you know, developed into this pinnacle of what gaming characterization can be, and character growth and relationships in gaming. On top of, I mean, we talk about who has the fullest package. Kratos has some of the coolest weaponry and amazing skill trees, and it moves and attacks and finishers.
So I thought for sure you were gonna point out his rock hard abs when you said that.
That's right.
Because he's got those
That's right.
too. I mean, Kratos hard workout regime as well. He's a dedicated man.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, here's the thing. The fact of the matter is I could spend this long talking about the characterization of this guy and not even talk about the biggest part of the game, arguably, which is the combat and the way you move around and everything that you can do with him physically to you know, fight the enemies in the game. It's just a masterclass, and I love this character. And I don't know how the game ends, so I'm not going to speculate. But I mean, I've just enjoyed every second I've had with Kratos, especially over 2018 and this game as well. So best character, happy to win the award this year from me.
Well deserved. I had Kratos written down for a long time for this one. It was Kratos, Connor, and what I actually picked, which I will say. But yeah, shout out to Kratos. A game can win 2 years in a row. Wild if a character from that game, just even more specific, could win 2 years in a row. And I will be shocked if I don't cry at the end of Ragnarok.
Yeah, no matter what happens.
He will make a return, I'm sure. That's awesome. I went with the other family duo of this year.
Amicia!
And
Amicia!
And it was, of course, Hugo from Plague Tale Requiem. Shout out to Amicia for being a very strong contender for Requiem. And I mean, they kind of come as a package deal, so it's a little bit difficult to separate them. But I had to go with Hugo because a video game character has never made me cry before. And I cried finishing the end of this game. It's so good. Like, you just really fall in love with this kid. Of course, like, the whole Plague Tale story, it picks off right from one. It's kind of mirrored to God of War in a way where it's the sequel to a game that was very story focused, very character focused, about a relationship where the two characters kind of start out a bit estranged from each other, and you know, they've got their own hangups and they develop a relationship. You see it grow over time. Hugo, and of course there's a younger child involved, so there's a lot of similarities, but Hugo to me was just, you can't help but love him. He is a child. He is, you know, silly. He is funny. He is wise beyond his years often, but he's just got that innocence that you'd want to protect him so much. And the whole plot of 2 is basically like, Hugo's sick. We need to save him because he might die.
Amicia, I'm going to die.
Amicia, please. And I was like, I swear to God, if something happens to this kid, like, I'm gonna go on a rampage. I was so mad. And I played this game stressed like 80% of the time because I was like, oh God, what if Hugo dies? Oh God, what if Hugo dies? And I won't tell you what happens in the end, if he dies or if he makes it. Or
I will be finding out very shortly.
But I love this kid. Like, he's smart, he's funny. Like, there's one scene where they go through all this shit. Like, it's a dark, horrible game, but he's got that kind of like child's like optimism where, like, you know, you do all the horrible things, but then they get to a nice field, a beautiful, wonderful flower field. And Hugo's been sick, he's been coughing, he's like passed out multiple times. But they get this field, and there's like one big massive tree. and in the field, and he turns to Amicia. They decide they're gonna have a race or whatever, and so he cheats. He starts running faster than her, and he gets the tree first. And then he's like, "Oh, now I'm the king. Like, you gotta treat me like I'm the king because I won." And he's just sort of being a little shit about it more than anything else. But it's just those small moments that you get between characters that are like, it's just that relationship, it's that warmth, it's all the micro affections of, like, if they're walking somewhere, she'll put a hand on his shoulder, or if there's something that worries him, he's looking up to her to see if she's scared so that he knows if he needs to be scared or not. It's him kind of having that vulnerable and child innocence, but then also there's parts of the game where he kind of steps up and he takes
Mhm.
control. She's falling apart and he's the strong one for the group. And oh god, I just love Hugo. Like, man, I would do anything for this kid, I swear.
Likable, very likable.
He's such a great little kid. I love Hugo. He just likes to collect feathers, he just does cute kid shit like that, where, like, you used to pick flowers for him in the first game, and in the second game,
Mhm,
you pick a
mhm.
flower for him, he's like, "Oh, I don't like flowers anymore." It's like, "Oh, flowers are boring," like, lasagna's
Of
not his
course.
favorite meal anymore, just randomly
Yeah,
he's
now chicken
decided he
fingers are.
doesn't like flowers, but then you find a bird feather laid, he's like, "Oh, I do like birds," and he's so excited because now you can collect bird feathers. And, oh, man, it's
I'm excited
just
to play
too
this.
cute.
It's next on the list of my big games to play
Oh,
after God of War, so
I'm
I'm
s
excited.
I'm stressed I'm stressed all over again for you to play this game.
I can't wait. Can't wait.
Yeah.
And
Shout
neither
out
will
to
you have
Hugo.
to wait for our next award. We're getting down to it now. There's only 3 awards left to go. The next one here is Most Unique Game. Not quite like anything you've ever played before or ever will again. And I know we're not reading the descriptions, but I really like that description a lot because it's mysterious and you never know if you'll quite play something like that again. So, what's your most unique game of the year, Kate?
This is gonna be a rapid fire round
Mm-hmm.
because it is Inscription. Don't look anything up. I'm gonna tell you nothing about it. Just sit down, play it, and be taken on an incredible journey.
What more
Yeah.
can you say about that game? Uh, I did not put Inscription as mine because I put a game,
Aw.
Signs of the Sojourner, which is a game that I played
Okay.
on Game Pass earlier this year, which is a fascinating game. It's so unique because it's about language and communication, which is a topic that I think a lot of games, like, you obviously communicate in a lot of games, but there's not a lot of games built around the act of having a conversation, especially when that game takes the form of a deck builder, which is really interesting. The whole game, you're basically playing as this kid who is taking over. I believe her mother's role is kind of a delivery person in this series of little villages that live around near each other in this area. And you basically go around to these different places. You're having conversations with people through card games. And the games basically are just different symbols on these cards in your hand, and you're trying to match them with what the other people have. So if you have a triangle and they have a triangle, you can play those cards and they'll match, and then you can advance your conversation. And the whole game comes to being to be like, okay, how am I going to talk to these people? What cards am I going to put in my deck? If I learn to talk this type of language, this person's very empathetic. They have a lot of triangles, which could represent empathy. Then when you talk to someone who's more stern later on and a bit more like self-centered, they have a lot of squares or whatever shape represents that. Then you might have a hard time talking to them and advancing your relationship there, but vice versa. And so, taking cards from other people's deck once you've talked to them is like representative of learning their perspective or learning how they like to talk about the world. And I just think that's such a great concept and a unique way to look at language and how you sort of take language from those you speak with into your own vocabulary, which is your deck of cards. It's so symbolic and so lovely. And I just think it's so unique. And a very fun game on top of that.
Beautiful little package. I need to get around to playing
Mm-hmm.
that game. Even just for the premise alone, like,
Yeah.
I think, like, it's definitely saying a lot. Like, I did play maybe an hour of the game, and I just never, I just wanted to check it out quickly,
Mm-hmm.
before, like, committing to playing it, but it's a little bit, like, simplistic, I guess. Like, the themes are really good. The actual,
Mm-hmm.
like, way it plays out is very simple, but it is just such a clever idea, and it's almost one of those games that is so unique, but it's almost surprising, like, why we've never
Yeah,
Like, it's
yeah,
not
yeah.
complicated, but it is so incredibly unique. You're
Yeah,
right.
no, it is, and it's a cool game. Like I think anyone could play it. You can't really lose, I don't think, but you definitely wouldn't get to see, the final parts of some of the conversations if you don't sort of use that deck building skill built up over years of Slay the Spire to and Marvel Snap to kind of
That's
get the most
right.
out of your deck. So there's something in it for everybody, I think.
Mhm. That is fantastic. So that leads us into number 10, which is the final award before we get into our ultimate Game of the Year winners. And this is a new category for the show, but a really strong one I think we'll keep around. And this is for best ending. So, as we described it before, best boss fight, story beat, revelation, just whatever kind of wowed you at the end. It just sort of like was that
Yes,
final
yes.
punch at the end of the game. So,
Well, this
what
this
do
is
you
a
got
tough
here?
one, and I had a few ideas in my head. Actually, Cuphead was on the list for this one. I loved the final boss of Delicious Last Course. I think it was great, but you know, this is something we've talked about, and I'm wondering if we have the same game here. I'm beginning to think we do not have the same game here, um, and I'm beginning to think that you've chosen something that's made me sad for your best boss, best ending. We'll see, but mine is Death's Door because I played this year. And now that
Well,
I'm thinking about it,
here's the thing. I
you played
had
Death's
Death's
Door
Door
the year
written down for
before.
this, and then I realized it won an award last
Yes.
year, so it
Okay,
was
so this
out.
is what scrapped it. So
That's what grabbed it.
Death's Door is something that you and I talk about, and I know you're here in spirit with me as saying this is the best ending to a game
It
because it
is.
truly is the best wrap up of a game that I think I've ever played. I think it literally is the best because what it is, it's just for people that have not played Death's Door, it's kind of a top down asymmetric um, combat slash puzzle challengey kind of Metroidvania style. It's not really Metroidvania. You know what I'm trying to say. It's one of those Zelda, top-down Zelda type of games.
Mhm.
But this boss fight is just so phenomenal at the end of the game because you have a variety of different kind of traversal skills and different attacks, and it puts it all together in such a fun, challenging, you know, thought-provoking boss fight that I think is just great. You're kind of running from this guy. You're going through different locations from the game. Some of it takes place in sort of the hub world, which is a cool little twist. And then you're like, oh, you're running, but now you're avoiding this new attack. And now he's weak to this different weapon that you have. And oh, now we're going to be running again, but we're grappling this time. And now we're trying to dodge him while he does this. And then you're figuring out what he's weak to. And it's just this sensory overload, but in a way where you don't feel confused because it's just building those mechanics you've used throughout the game and really testing what you've learned and how to use those abilities that you've got for one last challenge, which I think is, especially in a game that's this short, where you've used them all relatively recently and frequently throughout the game, where it just builds your skills for one final test, and it just does it so well. I can't say enough good things about it, and I just think this game is phenomenally crafted, especially towards the end. What a ride. Death's Door, everybody.
Could not agree more. I share the exact same sentiment. It is one of my favorite boss fights of all time for that exact reason of it's not just hard, it's not just the big guy you've been leading up to, it is everything you've done
Hmm.
tested
And
one
you're
last time.
forced to do it that way too. It's not like you
Mhm.
can optionally do it a certain way, but if you build your character a certain way, you can play your style or something.
Mhm.
And it's not to say that's bad, but for Death's Door and like the specific skill set that it gives you and the way that it uses that skill set and puts it all together into one package, I just think is so well crafted.
I'm so glad you put it there because I was devastated when I found out. I genuinely came up with this award because I wanted to give it to Death's Door.
Yeah.
That is genuinely, I pitched this one to James. He's like, oh, that's a good idea. I pitched this one kind of as a last minute topic because I wanted to slot Death's Door into it. And then I found out that Death's Door was invalid for me. So I am absolutely
Unbelievable.
thrilled. This is serendipitous. I'm so pleased. The other thing too is a quick shout out is Death Star has actually a really good story.
Hmm.
It's like a really interesting
That's
kind of
true.
perspective on like how death is a natural thing and kind of shifting that perspective of like, remorse and regret around death to like, this is natural and it's how new life grows. And I think like they wrap the story up really nicely as well. And even though it was definitely like more in the background than the gameplay. So
Good
I
shout.
love
Good
Death
shout.
Door.
See, that's why we do this podcast together because we got each other's backs, and you filled that one in for me beautifully.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, James, I will scratch your back one last time because this game
Yeah,
again is you bugged me to play,
it's
and
true.
I finally did. And very early on in this year, I completed The Last of Us. And then I played later the DLC, the Ellie expansion DLC.
Mhm,
So I've not
mhm,
played 2 yet. So I don't know where this game goes from the ending, but I do know that it has one of the best endings of any game I've ever played. In
it's
that
phenomenal.
final few sequences, not so much mechanic wise, it felt pretty similar to the rest of the game, but just in terms of story, which to me I think is the reason to play The Last of Us. That ambiguity of where it ends off with how Joel and Ellie
Mhm,
are, what they mean to each other. Yeah. So the choice Joel made is so understandable. Like it's hard to you can make an argument for if it was the right choice or if it was the wrong choice. And it's just so incredibly human. And their relationship was fascinating to watch unfold, even if
mhm,
maybe it was a little bit predictable. It was just the journey was so worth it. And that ending kind of it's very bittersweet because it's on one hand, they made it, it's positive, but it was really not what the characters expected, right? Like they didn't have a cure like they thought. They're not necessarily on the same page anymore, even though they'd been building up this
mhm,
relationship together. And there's that level of like Ellie wanted to kind of be like his child or be treated like a family, and Joel finally steps into that position of like, I think of her like my daughter. And then because of that, he lies to her and he does it to protect her, but
mhm,
she doesn't want that. Like she's used to being independent. She doesn't want to be protected. She wants to be loved and be a family, but she doesn't appreciate the lie, and he's doing it from this genuine sense of like, this is I wouldn't want my child to have to know this, and it's such an emotional roller coaster, and it culminates in this beautiful package of it really fits the tone of the game. Like if everything just had ended totally on a happy note, everything worked out, it wouldn't have fit The Last of Us. It wouldn't have felt genuine. This to me feels like what would happen with these characters. They both still have a lot of growing to do. They're both still in a horrible position, all things said and done. And I just felt like I needed to wait for 2 to like
mhm.
ruminate on this ending for a little bit and just sit with it because this could genuinely, I think, have been the end of the game and I would be satisfied with the end of Joel and Ellie's story.
I think so too, and I think something that's beautiful about it is that there is that lack of closure because I think
Mhm.
it's like humanizing, because very rarely are things like finitely done in your life, like there's some really rare events I think around that, and to wrap it all up with a pretty little bow would almost be inhumanizing in a way that the rest of the game treats it life and like humanity is such a delicate thing. And so I think that's like really on topic the way that they do leave it on the
Yeah.
cliffhanger.
That's a good way to put it because if it wrapped up neatly, it feels like a story then, right? Like
Hmm.
that's
Yeah,
how
it's
a
not a
story
story.
would
This is
end.
supposed to be a look into like the lives of these people in this situation, even though it's fictional.
Exactly, like, they're so human, like, you get to know them so well that you can genuinely sit and speculate on, like, what do I think they're gonna do next? Like, I'm sure there were tons of fan theories after this game came
Hmm.
out of, like, what's gonna happen? Like, is Ellie ever gonna confront him? Is she gonna forgive him? Is it gonna be, like, held over the relationship forever? Will they part ways? Like, what will their plan be?
Yeah.
And there's just so much to unpack in such a simple and elegant ending to the game, and even just some of the sequences leading up to it, like, there's that sequence where they see the giraffes for the first time just before you kinda get to the last sequence, and you just have that moment of kind of, like, calm before the storm where they get to see, like, a rare moment of beauty in the world,
Hmm.
and then everything that goes down and, the hectic escape and Joel making those snap decisions and everything getting turned on its head, and then finally another moment of quiet at the very end, but instead of beauty this time, it's like it's the quiet of uncertainty, and
Ooh.
I just
Chills
I
down the
love
spine, Kate. Chills down the spine.
Oh, you know what? These 2 are a ringer for best character as well, like, that is a tough, category we came up with because,
They are. That's
man,
true.
characters are what you fall in love with a game sometimes, and
That's
they're what
true.
sticks with you afterwards, but
That's seriously a
my
really hard category. In certain years, like best favorite
Yeah.
character might be like the one that's like, oh my god.
It's It's the stress. It's the stress so much. But Last of Us, amazing game. I finished it right before the remake came out.
Good timing.
But yeah, 2023 will be on to number 2, I hope.
All right. Looking forward to it. Just as I am looking forward to our last award of the show, which is, of course, Game of the Year, the game your brain will not shut up about. And although I need to pose this as a question, Kate, I'm sure I don't really need to ask. What is your Game of the Year for 2022?
Well, there has been something surprisingly missing from my list so far. And after 160 hours spent in Limgrave and beyond,
And
it's
beyond.
of course Elden Ring. I've talked about it a lot on the show. A lot of it really excited. I've talked a lot of negative on the show as well. I think the first 100 hours are a lot stronger than the final 60. But at the end of the day,
sometimes there's beauty in imperfection, Kate, you know?
At the end of the day, Elden Ring is the behemoth that just would not stop. I would think about this game at work, come home, play it, go back to work the next day, be thinking about Elden Ring. It is some of the highest highs FromSoft has ever had. Some of the areas are just incredible. You mentioned going down to Nokron for your first time. The bosses, the world, the animations, how everything looks, the lore in this game. You talk to 2 giant fingers. the
You
reveal.
sure do.
There's
Even
some
I did
crazy
that.
reveal. There's some crazy reveal twist at the end of 2 characters being the same person. Like just crazy, wild, wacky shit going on. And just the amount that they were able to achieve, everything they've learned up until this point has brought them to Elden Ring. And you can see the DNA of all their previous games, but there's also so much innovation. Like, it is insane how much they put into this game. I played 160 hours to beat it. That is outrageous. That is not a single minute of grinding or of like going out of my way to do extra shit because I looked something up. Like, it is just like you just breadcrumbed forever and ever and ever, and you're exploring this amazing world. And I genuinely look back on this list, and Elden Ring, aside from our best co-op award, which, to be fair, Elden Ring does have co-op and multiplayer. I just personally didn't engage with it very much. But aside from that, it genuinely contends for every single other award on this list, including funny, because Elden Ring's funny as shit. And I think, like, how does it not end up being your game of the year when these are the best aspects of games or things that, you know, stand out and are exciting about gaming, and Elden Ring is a shoo-in for every single one. Like, that is a masterpiece game for me.
What more can you say when you put it like that? How can you follow that up? Jeez.
Man.
Well, I can follow that up with 4 words for you, Kate. 4 words. Sacrifices must be made.
It's Inscription, right? Is it Inscription?
The game with my game of the year is Inscription.
Yes.
A game designed by one Daniel Mullins with the theme of sacrifices must be made. And so that is the theme of the game, and it is very fitting because this is one that's so hard to talk about, and we've talked about it on the show before, but it is something that legitimately cannot be discussed in detail because there's just so much unexpectedness in this game. Like you said, most unexpected game. You gave it that award to Inscription, and it's so true. We desperately need to do a spoiler cast on this game because
we do.
To talk about some of the things that happen and some of the things you see and just some of the places this game goes would be to completely, I wouldn't say make it, not worth playing, because it is still worth playing, but it just takes it away. Like the magic of the game is the surprise. But what you can talk about is the rock solid deck building game that this is, stripped out of everything else. I mean, this deck building game, we talk about deck builders a lot on our award shows, but it is fantastic. It's so approachable in a way that I like, where you don't have to build your deck in advance. You kind of get 1 card per round and you build on it slowly and see, this goes well with 3 things I already have. I'll take this and put it in my deck. And then, next time, I've got 3 birds already. I'll take a bird this time. So you're building it so nicely and slowly. You're navigating through the map. and then the theming of the game is what sets it all apart. Like, it's just that gritty, dark, like dirty, dingy. The cards have a tangibility to it. It's creepy. There's friction.
Yeah, we talked about the sound of it, of like when a card gets played on the table and it kind of slops down onto it, and when the teeth fall out of the bowl and they're clinking around.
Man, you can just hear it. And
you can.
I can close my eyes and put myself in that cabin room from Inscription and sitting at that table right here, playing that card game, and those creepy hands that come over the table to grab you. Like, I can feel them grabbing me, man.
Right? The hairs on the back of my neck just all stood up. But, Inscription's so good. Like, it deserves it. In another year, it could have easily been my game of the year. Like, I fell in love with Inscription. I am in love with Inscription. I played all through the
I mean, you've played more than I have at this point, I think.
I played all through the bonus version and beat every single like deck configuration that you can start out with. It's a good game. It's so much more than just a deck builder, but the deck builder part of it is also magnificent.
And that's why it's just such a phenomenal game to me, because you could remove just the deck building game and it would still be like an A tier deck building game, like right up there in conversation with the best ones out there. Slay the Spire, whatever you want to put in there for the games that we like. But then you add in all the other stuff. People do know it's got escape room elements. You're in that cabin at the start of the game. You're kind of looking around. You can get up from the table during the game and, I'm going to go look around on these shelves and see what kind of weird things are over here. Or there's a cuckoo clock on the wall. Like, I wonder what that's for. Why, when I walk over to this guy across the table from me, why is it still so dark and I can't really see his face? There's a book on the shelf over here with some rules written in it, but I can't really read all the pages. There's something blocking my sight. There's just so many mysteries that you unravel as you go, and obviously more, like we've been saying and kind of teasing, just get added on. But it's like the everlasting gobstopper of just these little mysteries and little breadcrumbs of like, something's just not quite right with this. And it's just such a fascinating little box of curiosities that I just, I'm so enamored by this game, Kate. I gotta tell you.
Yeah.
Like I said to you before, when I played this game, before I even introduced it to you, I was like, this is like in the conversation for my favorite game I've ever played. And after finishing it, and I still pop back into once or twice a week, I'll have a run of Gary's mod, it's not Gary's mod, it's
Casey's mod.
Casey's mod. Gary's mod is that other stupid thing.
That's that like Steam thing. Gary's mod, my game of the year.
Not that. But I still pop in, play some Casey's mod, and I just think this game is phenomenal. And when we do the next, our best top games of all time list, or when I make my own personal one, like this is legitimately in the conversation.
This game is contender for winning that list. I'll tell you right now, like it is like top of my list. I know I'm not going to get another FromSoft game in there, so honestly, I could be pushing Inscription.
Yeah, it's phenomenal.
So good.
It is phenomenal. You must play it, everybody.
And Stoat. Shout out to Stoat, a very good character.
Shout out to Stoat.
Competition for Stoat this year, but Stoat, very, very close running.
Stinkbug, maybe not so much. Stoat, you're pretty close, my man. Pretty close.
And Green Slime. Shout out to Green Slime.
Amazing. Well, there you have it, folks. It's our awards. We gave away all of our Cloud Cups for 2022. 11 cups each for 22 total awards. Wow, so many. Amazing.
Next year's going to be tough to balance that out. I know how you give out 23 cups.
There we go. Yeah. Just to wrap it up, do you want to go over each award and your winner there, Kate? Rapid fire style?
Sure. Rapid fire style. Most surprising, unpacking, best co-op, As Dusk Falls. Funniest game, the hilarious Metroid Dread. So many jokes. Best comfort food, Monster Sanctuary. Best new mechanic, Fury. The best Metal Hellsinger soundtrack award to Metal Hellsinger. Most screenshottable, What Remains of Edith Finch. Favorite character, Hugo from Plague Tale Requiem. Most unique game, Inscription. Best ending, The Last of Us. And finally, golden game of the year for the golden grace itself, Elden Ring.
Congratulations. And for me, we have the following. Most surprising game, Elden Ring. Best co-op, Fortnite. Funniest game, Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy. Best comfort food, obviously Marvel Snap. Marvel Snap. Best new music, best new mechanic, As Dusk Falls. Best music or soundtrack is Metal Hellsinger. Most screenshottable, Cuphead, The Delicious Last Course. Favorite character is Kratos from God of War. Most unique game, Signs of the Sojourner. Best ending, Death's Door. And finally, game of the year, Inscription. Ooh, best game ever. We will see next time. But that'll be in a future episode, everybody, because for now, this is going to end off a monster podcast for us. We just want to say thank you one more time for supporting the show throughout the whole year. Thank you so much. We hope you've sincerely enjoyed listening half as much as we've enjoyed making this content. And then we're all having a great time, aren't we?
Sounds so disingenuous.
It does sound so disingenuous.
James, blink twice if you're okay.
I'm fine, Kate. I'm just tired. And we have another episode to record right after this because we have a little special gift coming out on Christmas for everyone as well. Although that's going to be... that's a whole nother thing. Let's get out of here. Like we said, thank you for the support, everybody. And this has been Cloud Control, the gaming podcast that's not just good, it's good enough. And we'll see you on the next episode.